Ladies and gentlemen, do welcome to the next episode of my Safe Bet Show. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Mr. Luis, or as he's very well known throughout the industry, Lou Rogacki, Deputy Director and Assistant Attorney General at the New Jersey's DGE, as my guest today. Hi, Lou. How are you doing?
Hi, Martin. How are we? Appreciate you having me on.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for coming on. And shall we delve right into it? Now, you've graduated from the Seton Hall University or Seton Hall Law School, and then you moved on to do the Vermont Law School. So these days, as you know, I suppose most of us who follow the show would know as well by now, I'm a very proud resident of the Garden State. So I might be biased. Quite a few guests on this podcast that have hailed or moved to the state, just like I have. So I could, or we both could, spend a lot of time singing New Jersey's praises, but I would like to talk to you about Vermont. Beautiful nature. I've been there only once or twice, so hopefully I've got it right. But beautiful nature, bit of a rustical feel, very good people, and loads of festivals. I read even in the dead of winter. So is that when it felt like, what it felt like when you studied there? Was it just like this, or is my 2-day stay in Vermont a couple of years ago completely misleading me?
I can guarantee you, Martin, that my 3 years in Vermont were the polar opposite of your 2-day stay there. Obviously, I was up there to go to law school. Contrary to popular belief, I did not go to Seton Hall Law School. I went to Seton Hall undergrad, went up to Vermont to experience being away at school. And I experienced it. I experienced a lot of snow, beautiful state, lots to do. Just never had time to do a lot of the things that there were to do. So, yeah, I would say my 3 years were the complete opposite of your 2-day stay there.
That's fair enough. And thanks for clarifying all that for us. I was sure that the diligent you would have done nothing but studying. That's completely ruined the segue into my next question, because I was going to talk about all the festivaling, if that's even a word, that you would have done. But yeah, you just confirmed that you worked really hard on your law degree when you were up there. And when done, on a serious note, you started clerking for the Honorable Patricia K. Costello, JSC, in the criminal division of the Hudson County at the Superior Court. So Judge Costello sat on that bench for nearly 30 years. Google is telling me. So what was it like to work for her? Because she's most definitely a very esteemed judge in this neck of the woods.
I do have to add about Vermont before we move on that it is where I met my wife. So it does hold a special place for me.
Oh, even
I'd get in a lot of trouble.
Better, so
I'd get in a lot of trouble if I didn't mention that part.
Well, let's hope that she will watch the end product once this podcast is out, and without reading anything into it, you might have done some festivaling in Vermont after all that.
But Judge Costello, I couldn't have asked for a better year with the judge. I obviously returned home. I grew up in Hudson County, and I had the opportunity to have that clerkship. And I was very interested in pursuing a career in criminal law at the time. And I was she had only been on the bench for about 3 years. So I was her third law clerk of those 30 years you saw. She then moved on to several other family law judge. She did special civil. She actually became the presiding judge of criminal in Hudson County. And because of her reputation and her demeanor, she ultimately finished her career as the assignment judge in neighboring Essex County, which was kind of unheard of, to take a judge from another county and bring them in as the assignment judge. And, like I said, it couldn't have been a better year for me to learn after law school. She was a brilliant lawyer and judge, and she was just a genuinely great person, and went out of her way to make that 1 year clerkship a learning experience for me in every way. There wasn't a meeting she had where she didn't have me in her chambers to watch her interact with the lawyers, to watch the lawyers interact. Sat right next to her when she presided over trials. Ironically, she's very close with her husband, with her sister and her husband. They both also became judges. Her husband became a judge while I was doing my clerkship. So it was very much a family affair for them. And it was almost like I clerked for 3 different people and 3 different judges. It was great.
That's definitely a family theme that's permeating this podcast. And you've very kindly explained the duties of a law clerk, because I should at least hope that not all those who watch this podcast happen to be lawyers, because that would be a real shame. And let's not go into the long-standing rivalry between the Hudson and the Essex County. Ultimately, our friend BB3 is not on this podcast. Now, what attracted you to criminal law? Because that's talking of thieves. That's clearly a theme that's rooted throughout your whole career. Any particular interest, or did someone just foist that on you and you stuck to it?
No, it was just something I was always interested in since I was young. Criminal law, being a prosecutor, and the opportunity to clerk with a criminal judge was the perfect opportunity. I loved the movie And Justice for All when I was a kid. Probably could be better movies I should have liked, but that's what kind of spurred my interest in law and in being a prosecutor.
I'm glad you didn't mention the infamous Devil's Advocate or other movies of that ilk. And well, unlike Lou, I'm already a failed lawyer. That's why I need to stick to responsible gambling and lobbying. But personally, for what it's worth, I've always considered criminal law to be rather a psychological subject as opposed to a category of law. But let's not go there either. Deputy Attorney General. So you were sworn in as a Deputy Attorney General back in 1993, and that was at the Division of Alcoholic Beverage Control. Well, we're talking about devils already, yet again. And then in 2002, moved to the Division of Gaming Enforcement, the DGE, at that point with the Service Industry Licensing Bureau. So are there any lessons that you've drawn from your role at the ABC, I believe would be the acronym for the Alcohol Beverage Control Body, that you've ended up applying to our industry, to the gambling ecosystem?
I think there are. There are obviously 2 very different industries, but in a lot of ways, you're dealing with 2 regulated industries. So when I was at ABC, there was a lot of interaction, and with the industry folks, you're doing a lot of the similar things as a deputy attorney general with another regulated industry. You're coordinating investigations. You're dealing with backgrounds of individuals and investigations of their backgrounds. And you're generally dealing with policy issues, like I said, from another industry that's regulated and needs to interact with the regulator. In the mid-90s, ironically, when I was there in the mid-90s, I was heavily involved with a program that they were launching, which was a responsible hospitality program, which was the first time that, you would have the industry regulators and folks from Alcoholics Anonymous sitting at the same table to work on ways to outreach for people that were in need of help, and for the industry to actually be a part of that rather than be perceived as the problem. And that was a great prelude to my joining DGE and having worked on that and saw how that rolled out for now my current role, where I deal with a lot of responsible gaming issues and setting policy and making recommendations to the director with regard to responsible gaming.
And we'll come on to talk to that in a second. But in your book, to stick to this theme, in terms of public perception these days, is there a big difference between how alcohol is being perceived and perhaps treated and how gambling is being perceived? And I mean in New Jersey, but then also throughout the nation?
I think so. I think we're getting there where we need to be with gambling. Obviously alcohol, drug use, those were at the forefront. And listen, we go to the same conferences, Martin. There's a lot of talk about getting gambling to the point where alcohol was 20 years ago. Getting people the help that they need when they're either identified, they reach out for help, however they're identified. I think there's a lot of similarities. And I think there's a lot of work to be done from a public health perspective to get us where we need to be with problem gambling.
We definitely do go to a lot of the same conferences and share panels, and I'm delighted to report that Lou has not started avoiding me just yet. So I'm wearing that as a badge of honor. But, excuse me, fast forwarding to November of 2016, you were, and very belated congratulations, appointed Deputy Director and Assistant Attorney General at DGE. And in that capacity, you served, as you've just alluded to, served there in critical roles that supported, in my book, seamless implementation, of internet gaming in New Jersey back in 2013, and then sports wagering, of course, in 2018. And it's fair to say we both might be boys, but Jersey's still leading the nation on its path. It has been leading the nation to online casino and sports betting. So here comes the question, bit philosophical perhaps, or even psychological. Did it feel somewhat magical being a key part of a project this big? Or what did it feel like?
To use your word, I would say 2018 was more magical for me because we had survived 2013, quite honestly. 2013, there were so many unknowns that there were a lot of sleepless nights for everybody involved with that project. In 2013, we were trying to launch a completely new industry that none of us at the Division of Gaming Enforcement knew anything about. We were learning on the fly, and we had to get all the licensing and lab testing done in 9 months. I remember sitting in a conference room and former Director Rebuck telling the entire staff, the governor has told me if you need more than 9 months, just let me know. And I told him I will not be asking for an extension, so don't anyone ever bring it up again. So the pressure was on from day one. He set the expectation, and there was nobody else doing this anywhere in the U.S. Nevada had poker, but that's a much different state with borders of having New York and Pennsylvania right across from our borders and so close. Nevada didn't have to deal with that from just the geolocation perspective. So there was really nobody we could turn to that was close. Obviously, it was launched in Europe, and the folks over there couldn't have been more accommodating for any questions we had, and really helped us get through it. But we really felt like we were on our own on an island, and boy, we hope this works. And then there was no break from that to sit back and enjoy it after 13, because once we got it launched, we had to maintain it. And we had to, again, because we'd launched in 9 months, we knew we were going to make mistakes. And that's hard for a regulator to admit that, hey, we're probably going to do things just to get launched that we know we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to tweak and we're going to have to revise. But we got to get launched in 9 months. So we're going to do it X, Y, and Z, and we'll go back and fix it later if need be. And so we started that process, especially with the affiliates, how we licensed affiliates. There was a lot of tweaking there and a lot of companies coming in to say, hey, we know you guys are trying to do this and you're trying to learn it, but we're not sure if you knew about this aspect. And there was that learning process for us. And that's a credit to former Director Rebuck. He was very receptive to that, and wanted us to make those adjustments to make this we didn't implement this to make this industry fail. So it was very important to him that we got it right and continued to work to get it right. And then you also had all the companies that didn't want to be in that initial wave of 30 companies we looked at. They didn't want to be the guinea pigs. So once we got launched in November of 2013, suddenly you had another 30 to 60 companies knocking on the door saying, we didn't think you could pull it off. Now that you have, now we want to be licensed. So there was really no time to sit back and say, wow, that was magical. We did it. We did it. Now let's keep going. And then suddenly the Supreme Court granted cert on the sports wagering case. And so that was in July of 17, and oral argument was set for December of 17. And we started preparing based on what we had learned from internet gaming, knowing that, look, if we win this case, as soon as that decision comes out, we're not going to have 9 months. We're going to have to be ready. So we need to start planning now. And when former director Rebuck got back from the Supreme Court hearing in December, he told us all, let's ramp it up. Get regs written. Obviously, they'll have to be tweaked once the legislature passes something. But he was that confident we were winning that case. And we started that process. And we relied on those 5 years of internet gaming that we had under our belts. So, we had those processes in place. Now it was transferring that to launching sports wagering, both retail as well as mobile. The big challenge we had there was, we had a lot of companies coming in saying, just have to flip a switch. We have this in Europe. It's not a big deal, and so there were challenges there. And it was just, you could enjoy that a little bit more because the anticipation was there. The other thing that made 2018 a lot more special for me, and I know Director Rebuck's been on this podcast and has sang the praises of his staff. We have a great staff. And in early 18, we found out that we had 2 casinos that were trying to open up. Well, they both announced, Ocean and Hard Rock both announced shortly before the Supreme Court argument that they would both be opening on June 28th of 2018. So in addition to trying to get ready to launch sports wagering, we had that going on. So it was the fact that we accomplished launching sports wagering at 2 locations, one a racetrack, one of our biggest properties at the Borgata on June 14th. We opened 2 casinos on the 28th, and then we just continued rolling from there. That the fact that we were able to accomplish, in addition to launching sports, hey, we're just going to open 2 casinos at the same time on the same day. That really made it a lot more special for me when I look back on it.
Definitely must have felt like a very hard slog back then, but I suppose this is the beauty of the benefit of the hindsight.
I'm still trying to catch up on some sleep from that.
6 years later, but it might be, and there was going to be my point. It's probably feeling quite magical right now. Yes, that's definitely shining through your comments.
It brings back great memories. And the teams, like I said, I can't sing the praises of the folks that work for me and with me, of how everyone just pulled together. We knew what the mission was. We knew what the goal was. There was nobody saying we can't do this. And it was really just, it does bring back really good memories. And that's something that will always stay with me.
And from my own experience, and I'm saying it very, very seriously, brushing all my silly jokes aside, fantastic stuff at DGE. I've always enjoyed working with you and your team and everybody else around. We've mentioned Director Rebuck, a legend by now, one of the, pardon the pun, all-Americans of this industry. If I may, I will use your expression and call him the former director. I was going to call him the retired director, but he would probably kick me in my backside next time he sees me if I did that. And you have had the privilege and pleasure to work right next to him and with him. So you have some kind of inside knowledge to the extent you feel appropriate to share. Now, what would be in your book, besides what we just talked about, 13 and 18, but what would be the highlight of your interaction? And feel free to choose whether there's a silly story, silly but entertaining story to tell, or something that would continue cementing Dave's legacy.
Yeah. Listen, working with Dave Rebuck was amazing. There's no other way to put it. The things that he accomplished as the director, when we've just talked about two of them, it was solely due to his leadership and the fact that he pushed us. He knew we could get it done, and we just needed a push sometimes. His drive and dedication on a daily basis was impressive to sit there and see. It was easy to run through a wall for Dave. Since he'd usually already run through it before any of us could get to it. He was not someone who just sat there and said, okay, you go do this, you go do this. I'd hear him on the phone talking to someone that he told me to go in my office and call before I could even get to my office. And it's like, Dave, what are you doing? So it was to see him operate was sometimes inspiring, not to sound sappy. But he was no nonsense when it came to addressing every issue that faced the casino industry during his 12 years as director. I learned something from that man every day, that I worked with him, and I'll always be indebted to him, for having the confidence in me to pick me in 2016 to be his next deputy director. And I served in that capacity with Mary Jo Flaherty, who is now our interim director. And I'm happy to serve with her and give her the same effort I gave Dave Rebuck, as long as her or I are in our positions. With regard to a funny story with Dave, there's a couple, and I'll keep most of those to myself and for him when I see him at conferences. But there's one that's kind of funny and I just alluded to it, of how crazy 18 was. Well, the Supreme Court, we won the case on May 14th. We opened up the first two books on June 14th. And then he took a team to Hard Rock. I took a team to Ocean on the 26th because we had to do soft openings. And we basically embedded ourselves at those two properties, worked out any issues to get them to their grand openings on the 28th. So there wasn't a lot of time to just kind of pay attention to bigger pictures and all that kind of stuff, because there was a lot going on. And we were also trying to get the Meadowlands launched in early July. So we had a lot on our plates. And I remember getting back from the casino openings in 18 when they did the grand openings, and we felt really good about ourselves and what we had done. And we sat down in his office and his phone rang. And he just looked at the phone and he goes, "This is a joke, right?" And I'm looking at him and he goes, "All right, I'll have Lou do it." And I'm like, "Oh, what's coming?" And he hangs up and he goes, "Call all the casinos. We don't have a budget. We may have a state shutdown. Call all the casinos, including the two we just opened, and find out if they have their closing plan." And I was like, "I'm calling them." He goes, "Yep, that's the perks of being deputy director, pal."
One of the many perks. Needless to say, the DG is full of legends. Lou's one in his own right, have been won multiple Regulator of the Year awards. Let's talk about what you guys, to the extent you're allowed, let's find out what you guys have in store for the industry when it comes to responsible gambling. Yet another example of you having led the charge. So what's coming our way in the next few years?
It's hard to say what's coming. It's more of a commitment by us that, and this was something instilled by Dave, and Mary Jo believes in this very much as the interim director. There's no resting on your laurels. We can't sit there and just say, "Hey, okay, well, we have best practices. We put those in place. We have the 10 triggers. We're done." We're now in that process where we implemented those best practices. And by the way, thanks to you, you were a big part of Dave and I realizing that could be done. And that information was something that the marketing departments at the operators and at the casinos already had and was already using. And it was kind of a light bulb moment for us when you had that meeting with us a couple of years ago. And that was really the genesis of the best practices. So thank you for that. There's no sitting back. We've accomplished a lot in the area of RG in the last few years, but we're constantly evaluating and learning, almost like what I talked about with internet gaming. We're constantly evaluating, okay, this is what we're doing now. Is it working? Is there a way to improve it? And most importantly, there's a lot of meetings that go along with that, not just internal meetings. We're constantly listening to feedback from other regulators of what's working in other states. We're constantly listening to the industry, what's working, what's not working. And, sometimes you have to weed through that because obviously sometimes the industry is telling you something's not working because of, they're coming at it different than you are as a consumer protection agency. So, what couple things that we've done, I mentioned the RG best practices. The Attorney General asked Director Rebuck at the time to name a dedicated RG coordinator. And we now have that person. She's been in place for almost a year now. And she will be the person who, kind of makes the policy decisions. Previously, we were doing it piecemeal, whether it was the director, myself, or the head of our lab, Shane Leshkari. We were all kind of handling things as they came up. And now we have a centralized person who's going to deal with all of those things and make recommendations to myself, the director, and we'll have, it's going to cover development, oversight, implementation of existing RG policies. And Jamie's been great. That's DAG Jamie McKelvey. She's been awesome. We've also made enhancements just internally to our internal webpage so that it's easy for someone who's looking for resources to just go to and doesn't want to have an account with an operator. They can come to our website and there's links to everything as well as the Rutgers studies, ability to self-exclude right from our webpage, as I said, so that you don't have to go to an operator and create an account if you don't want to. And we've also made it easier for people to self-exclude with video conferencing ability. We have an 800 number in place for people to just get answers to self-exclusion related questions. And like I said, that video conferencing, because if someone feels they have the need to self-exclude for a lifetime, we typically require them to come in person. And we can now do that with the video conferencing capability, much like we're doing this podcast now.
Absolutely. All very commendable efforts. A lot to unpack there. Yeah. First of all, thank you for your very kind words, perhaps bit too kind. Secondly, from now onwards, we all know how to properly pronounce Afshane's name, so everybody should remember that. And yet again, on a much more serious note, you're making a very critical point there. The regulation, and neither should we be sitting still. It's in a constant state of flux because we need to be not only reactive to what's coming at us, but I would suggest, need to be as proactive as we can before we talk sport, and then before I subsequently give Lou his 60 seconds to shine even more by delivering his key messages. Let's, ideally very briefly, if I may ask, do a bit of a marketing pitch, a plug-in around the Seton Hall Law School's gambling, or gaming I should say, compliance bootcamp, because we're both amongst the founding fathers, the Madisons, the Jeffersons of the bootcamp, which, as a reminder, is not a conference. So, in your book, Lou, what impact has the program had, and what's the key objective here?
Yeah, and just before we get to Seton Hall, there's one other big development on the RG front that I'd be remiss to not mention. In June, Governor Murphy announced he issued an executive order and he called for a task force to be created. The chairman of the task force is the Attorney General, and you also have the heads of DGE, Casino Control Commission, the state lottery, Consumer Affairs, which oversees legalized games of chance, which has all the fantasy, as well as, I'm forgetting somebody, the New Jersey Racing Commission. So all the horse racing. And the purpose of that group is to look at their collective responsible gaming policies and what each of those agencies are doing and what we can do better as a state to not only be coordinated, but to get people the resources and the help that they need. That group's work, that task force's work is going to begin in the next week or so. It's actually already begun behind the scenes. And the governor expects to get a report with regard to all those facets of, again, what's working for one agency may not be working for another agency, but a full report of the task force work by March of 2025. So not a lot of time. He's set a very short window to get that report. And that's something that's definitely on the horizon for everyone. Now, the Seton Hall Law School Bootcamp, something near and dear to my heart. And as you mentioned, you and I were on the initial board, advisory board with regard to planning a compliance bootcamp. It's something that I take very seriously, obviously. The people that I have the most interaction on a day-to-day basis from the operators are the compliance people. And good compliance people are sometimes hard to find, sometimes very underappreciated within their own organization. They're viewed as the no people, which doesn't put them in a popular spot. But they're people that speak the same language a lot of times as the regulator. They're obviously coming at it from that business perspective. And this boot camp was really set up as a way to just kind of bring all those people together and kind of exchange ideas. We get a lot of regulators there, which is always great. And it's not a conference. It's really just a place. We do put presentations on. It's a lot of panels similar to how you see at conferences or G2E. But they're all geared toward compliance issues and dealing with regulators, dealing with the operators and having that interaction. We have a lot of law enforcement there. So it's, as you said, this is not an advertisement for it, but it has really built as a program. We have a lot of students from the law school who attend. And I just couldn't thank the law school staff enough. Everyone from the early days with Dean Buzang, who couldn't have been more hands-on with this project, to associate deans Alves, Glenn, and our current leader. I'll call her organizer, leader, Devin Cornell. She's been awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will not be abusing anyone's patience with a marketing pitch, but we nonetheless hope to see you all there in March. On to the home straight. I will not be naming any names, especially not Mike Gollop's name, but I tend to be jokingly advised by members of the DGE team, regulated owing to my rather dubious, mainly Boston-based sports teams affiliations. I might be forced even to apply for a personal license in New Jersey only to have it denied. So let's talk your sports loves, if you will. The Giants, the Devils, and the Pirates. So we can go one by one. Short and sweet answers, please. So do we believe that the Giants can crawl out of their hole and go back to their Eli glory days? Will the Devils manage to marshal all the talent they have and go deep into the playoffs? And finally, will the Pirates make a mark on the national stage as they deserve to do?
All right. I'm going to let you get your shots in as a Patriots fan. I have told you many times, and now it'll be out there in the ether. As a Giant fan, I have no problem with Patriots or the Patriot fans because I have 2 Super Bowls from you. Okay. It's very simple. It's all good.
We're generous people.
It's all love. It's all love.
Exactly.
Yeah. 18-1. That's all I'm going to say. The Devils, listen, the team is there. The team is there. They need to come together. They needed a little bit of goaltending last year. Everybody was excited from the season before when they really broke out after some tough seasons. They got a great young core, fun to watch. And I'm looking to have a really exciting season watching them this year. Don't forget my Mets. Today's a big day, trade deadline. So, long suffering Met fan as well.
I was trying, as a Braves fan, I was trying to forget them. You plugged them in.
Well, you're killing me. You are killing me. And of course, my Seton Hall Pirates. I've had season tickets since I went there. And I continue to have season tickets with about 8 of my closest college friends, as well as other people that we've met along the way that have become very close friends. It's interesting. You go somewhere to school and the sports brings people together. Similar to law school where, being in snow from September to May, brings people together. And I've got lifelong friends from law school as well. But yeah, I live, breathe, and die Seton Hall Pirates basketball.
We can agree on that one. Being an undrafted agent by any U.S. college, being a guest and a gringo in this country, go Pirates. 60 seconds for Mr. Rogacki to give us his final thoughts, please.
Okay. And again, thank you for having me on, Martin. I can't thank you enough. But over my 31 some odd years of working as a deputy attorney general, I've learned some important lessons. And having worked with some of the mentors that I've spoken about, we can always do better. And that we could always do better than what we have. And you'll never know where that next idea for improvement is going to come from. So it's never say no to a meeting. Never, discount something somebody's saying. There's a lot of times somebody says something, I don't agree with it. And a day or two later, I'm still thinking about it. I'm like, that really wasn't such a bad idea. So you really have to be open-minded. And as a regulator, you have to understand what you don't know and what you don't understand and just dive into it. And there's some really good regulators out there now that are doing that. Obviously, in the RG space, there's always more we can do. And the yearly reports from Rutgers are invaluable, and those keep us constantly evaluating ourselves and the industry and making things better for the citizens of New Jersey. It's also helping us keep an eye on the RG practices, a lot of the focus is on online, and sometimes we forget about the land-based casinos. So that's been a recent focus for us as well, is to make sure those land-based properties are implementing some of the good programs we've put in place, from the internet perspective. And, I've been sounding the alarm for years about advertising. Some of that's coming to roost. So the industry really does have a lot of work to do. I've seen some good work in the last year in this regard. With the advertising, but there's definitely a lot of work to do. I talk to people all the time and you hear about, well, that's going to create friction. And that is the wrong thing to ever say to a regulator who's trying to focus on consumer protection, and ensuring the integrity of the systems for the general public, to be told that, hey, a 5-second delay is going to create friction and, we need to sign people up quicker. And the last message I would just put out there is, more so than ever, because of sports wagering, because of internet gaming, because of the ability to video conference, regulators talk to each other. We talk to other regulators all the time and they tell us, X came in and they said they spoke to you about this. And they don't realize that we talk to that regulator because of whether it's sports integrity videos, or, just RG. Staying up to date on RG, that we pretty much talk to every regulator 2 to 3 times a month on a video call. So those old days of kind of pitting regulators against each other are long in the past, because I remember those days. We could do this in Nevada. Why can't we do it in New Jersey? Everybody talks to each other. They talk to each other frequently. If there's no video set up, everybody now knows each other and is comfortable with each other to the point where they'll just pick up the phone. So those days are long gone where the regulators don't know what other regulators are doing. And I know I went over my minute, so I apologize.
Absolutely no need. Thank you very much. Good sir, ladies and gentlemen. This was a true legend amongst the US, if not global, regulators, and a great man, Mr. Lou Rogacki. My name is Martin Lycka, and this was the latest episode of the Safe Bet Show. Take good care, and I shall see you next time.